Hello and welcome to Calls. This is the 2022 Valspar Championship Initial Research Show. Quite a fun weekend with the Players Championship still going on this Sunday evening. It'll be into Monday before we crown a winner at TPC Sawgrass. But on top of the interesting Players Championship, March Madness is around the corner. And then the baseball season's coming up, so quite a fun time of the year. So let's try to get through this intro because we have a lot to get into. Not to forget that the Valspar Championship is this week. So speaking of the Valspar, it's probably no surprise, especially with the Players Championship running longer. Normally, some bigger names will withdraw during the week for the Valspar, having just played the Players. So of the withdrawals that I've seen, it is Kevin Tway, Cameron Young, and Maverick McNeely have all withdrawn so far from the Valspar, and replacing them, Andrew Novak, who is on a sponsor's exemption, Trey Mullinex, Sean O'Hare, John Hunt, and David Lipsky. So I'm sure there will be more changes to come this week, and I will try to keep you all informed on that during the shows. But like I said, quite a fun time of the year. I mentioned March Madness, so hopefully you've got your brackets and such ready, the early research for that. So speaking of brackets, next week there are two tournaments again, one of them being the match play, the Dell match play. So we will have a full week again, and the match play starts on Wednesday, so I'm trying to figure out the schedule that I want to put together for you all. I am definitely going to cover both tournaments, the Dell match play and the Corrales Punta Cana. So with it starting Wednesday, at least the match play, I might have to move around some of the show order and put the Corrales Wednesday night. I'm still trying to figure that out, so make sure you look for me on social media and such, and stay up to date with my schedule, which, speaking of social media, the links to those are in the description of the video. Make sure you give me a follow there. That's where I post my betting cards, any research that I do throughout the week leading up to the tournament, any updates to the schedule like I just mentioned. So make sure you give me a follow at the links in the description. And in the description as well is an email to reach out to me if you want to be a part of bonus content, things such as bonus videos, my tournament fact sheet, which puts together my best bets and favorite DFS plays and fades and whatnot. So if you want to be a part of that content, reach out to the email in the description. All statistics tonight are provided by FantasyNational.com, as they are every night. It is simply the best tool out there. I say it every show. It is well worth your investment. Go check it out. You're not going to be disappointed. And then finally, chat is open. We are live. I want to hear about everything this weekend. How is your Players Championship going? Your outright wagers, your DFS teams. What did you think of the conditions? There's been a lot of discussion how some people just thought that the players should not be played or rescheduled. So want to hear your thoughts on that. Want to hear your thoughts on anything for the Valspar coming up this week. Any names that you're keying in on early for the betting market. Or if you want to talk about March Madness, we can sneak some of that in there as well. And of course, as usual, if you just want to come to the show, come to the chat, make fun of me, it's well warranted. So with that long intro out of the way, let's dig into the initial research for the 2022 Valspar. And we come over here like we always do on a Sunday evening to the tournament fact sheet from GCSAA. And Innisbrook is one of the toughest courses on the tour. So we are in Palm Harbor, Florida, the Innisbrook Resort, the Copperhead course. Most famous part of this course is called the Snake Pit. 3 very difficult holes, not unlike the Bear Trap, at the Honda. What we do know about the Valspar is a par 71, and it's pretty darn long for a par 71 at 7,340 yards. Very, very long, very difficult course. Some pretty fast greens, although sometimes they do slow them down depending on wind and time of year and whatnot. So before I get too much further, let me sure chat is up. The average green size here is just under field average, but in all reality, it's about tour average. I keep saying field average on these. It's a little bit smaller than tour average, but not by much. Not a lot of fairway, not a lot of rough. The thing is the bunkers here, and there's quite a bit of water in play as well. The greens are Bermuda. They are overseeded with POA, but they have played true to Bermuda for years and years. For Bermuda in the fairways and the rough. So that is what you need to know as an overview for Innisbrook. Average size greens, maybe a bit smaller, but a long, at least long by par 71 standards. Pretty fast greens. There is no architect data. I mean, Larry Packard is pretty well known for some of the designs around the country, but no data for him in Fantasy National. But it is a Larry Packard design. Bermuda greens, Bermuda all through the course. Lots of water in play and sand throughout the course. So that is a look at the Innisbrook Resort from a GCSAA view. So let's move over to Fantasy National. And again, some of this will be, hey, P, yes, snake pit time. You are correct. This is going to be, sometimes this tournament gets overlooked, and it can be a very fun tournament, and it's a very challenging tournament. So how's your weekend been? Hopefully you are doing well at the Players with all of your outright wagers and your DFS and such. So let me know how that's going in the chat there. But as we move over to Fantasy National, some of these players, like I've mentioned in the intro, are not going to be playing. Most notably, Cameron Young is already withdrawn. So your number 2 strokes gained total guy in the past 6 months is already withdrawn. So I'll make sure to keep up with that as we go through some of these stats. So just a quick overview. In the last 6 months, which is almost since the start of the tour season, there is, I think, a little bit of the BMW and the Tour Championship included in these past 6 months, but not too much. So it's almost just the 2022 season. But in that time span, your top 10 strokes gained total players, Justin Thomas, who as of now is still committed to the Valspar. Again, Cameron Young has withdrawn, so Colin Morikawa is number 2. Denny McCarthy 3, Sam Burns 4, Hovland, Fitzpatrick, Mac Hughes, Xander Schauffele, Lonto Griffin, and Joaquin Niemann are your top 10. And only because I see him not too far behind, Maverick McNeely has also withdrawn this week. And of course, these stats do not have the players in it. They might not have the players in tomorrow for the Data Dive show. So we might have to look at some things very briefly Wednesday before we dig into the DFS Tactics, if there tends to be, or if there lends credence to some of the factors at the players that might play here. So before we get too much further into some of the rankings and the research, players looking for me, good deal. Who'd you end up going with a lot of? Hopefully you have some Hoagie. If you took Anirban Lahiri, I would virtually shake your hand, because that is a decision that I was nowhere near. Neiman's been okay for me. I thought DJ would play better. I mean, he made the cut, but my DFS is probably not as good as yours, but it's looking okay. It's got some potential. I'm sure more guys will withdraw with the players. Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, most players withdraw from the Valspar anyway. Being the week after the players. So I am sure those 3 names will not be the only ones. So again, if you're on social media, I'm sure you know of people and find that information. But as soon as I find it, I will post it for you all when I find it. So again, before we get too much into the stats here, let's look at the Innisbrook Resort from a scorecard and graphical / analytical view. And the first thing that you'll notice here is this course, as I mentioned at the top, is pretty darn difficult. You see here the 10th most difficult and the 9th most difficult hole. So somewhere in between should be roughly par. They both play to a 10th of a stroke over par. Their toughest isn't necessarily the toughest hole on tour. It's 3/10 of a stroke over par, so it's very difficult, but nothing insane like hole 17 this week at Sawgrass. But even your easiest hole, I mean, while it does play close to 4/10 of a stroke under par, it's still not a great eagle opportunity. It's your best one here, but it's still not a great eagle opportunity. And you'll notice when we look at the scoring distribution, birdies, bogeys, and such, this course is just difficult. You've got plenty of holes that are just going to be difficult to par. You can see here the 15th, so the 4th easiest hole is almost par. So that really explains everything that I can. You come to 13th, it's only 5/100ths of a shot under par. There is 14th, it is just at par. So again, difficult course. So there's a look at the scorecard very quickly. Again, a lot of length. You've got a 600 plus par 5. You've got a fairly long 560 to open. Long par 3, long par 3, very long par 3. So it's just a long course. And what makes it difficult, as we'll see later on, is that it's not a bomb and gouge either. It's not a traditional long course. But anyway, let's get into the graphs here. So for the top 10 players, you'll notice that putting and approach, as they normally do, far outweigh the other two, but even putting is outweighing the approach. And then around the green is outweighing off the tee. So this is a course that favors short game. Even though it's so long, that will, again, speak credence to how difficult it is. Your irons are going to have to be dialed in, and even if they are dialed in, you're still going to have to get up and down for pars around Innisbrook. So there's your top 10s. As you move up the leaderboard here, your putting actually goes over 1 stroke per round. Your approaches it. The around the green and off the tee kind of even out here. And then you go to the winners, it is quite stark how much putting rises. And then around the green rises as well. It is just a short game course. A lot of sand saves, a lot of scrambling. Again, I can't say it enough. It is difficult. Your around the green players are going to really, really do well here. Or the guys that are just, absolutely dialed in with their irons. But we're going to take a look at a lot of putting. We're going to take a look at some around the green, although it'll probably be more specific in the sense of sand saves and scrambling on difficult, things like that. Your strokes gained by hole by par, probably no surprise on a very difficult course. You have to get your scoring opportunities on par 5s, although it doesn't outweigh the 3s and the 4s very heavily in the top 10s. But as we move up the leaderboard, par 5s start really taking some headway there, and then your winners, obviously the par 5s will just far outweigh anything from the 3s and 4s. But the 3s do outweigh the 4s fairly heavily in terms of each other in the winners. So that tells you that the par 3s are also very important here. These are about the same. Par 4 is a little bit higher, but these are about the same for the top 5s. And then you come down to the top 10s. threes are still higher than the fours. So a lot of emphasis on par fives and a lot of emphasis on par threes, especially since the par threes are long and they're pretty difficult, not unlike the Honda. So, and we saw how much par threes were important there. So there's a look at the strokes gained by hole by par. We come down to the hole composition here. You have got 5 par threes. So yeah, it's a par 71. That makes sense. Sorry, I got confused. So you have 5 par threes, 1 extremely long, 1 fairly short, and then 3 pretty good length par threes. So that we'll see if there is a lot of correlation between this length of par 3 and leaderboard success. Same thing with the par 4s. You have 5 par 4s that measure pretty short, but they're, again, pretty difficult. You've got 1 extremely short one, and a couple of decent length, or 3 decent length par 4s. So as we always do, especially in the data dive, we'll see if any length of par 4s equate to leaderboard success. And then your par 5s, you've got 3 in the fairly long tier and then 1 extremely long par 5. Approach shot distribution, it looks like the majority of approach shots come from 175 to 200 here at Innisbrook. 200 plus is pretty close to it, but the 175 to 200 is far more than the average tour event. So again, we'll look into it pretty heavily. We'll scrutinize the approach shot lengths here, but at least graphically, it says that 175 to 200 might be the focal point. So we move to the historic cut line, and this will speak to the difficulty of Innisbrook. Last year, the cut line was even, which is generally average, but you see here at +2, you've had as high as +4, and it's never been under par. So while it might signify average by Fantasy National terms, it is much more closer to difficult, probably right on the border of average and difficult. And you'll see that here in the scoring distribution. You actually have more bogeys than birdies, so about 15% to 17% in the bogeys, and then doubles is about 2%. So you almost have 20% here in bogeys plus, and only 15% in birdies. So again, a lot more positive, or I guess numbers in the black than in the red. And in golf, that's not good. Driving accuracy is lower than the average tour event. So what that means is you would think that, again, with this being a long course, guys are just trying to hit it far, trying to get as close to the green as they can. But I'm going to cheat here. You see driving accuracy a little lower than the average tour event, and the distance is a whole lot lower. So this course is just difficult off the tee. There's a lot of, again, forced layups, kind of like Sawgrass, especially like Honda, and it's not even easy layups to hit. Green regulation percentage, quite a bit lower than the average tour event. Speaking to scrambling percentage is a whole lot higher. So again, we're going to be focusing on scrambling difficult, around the green, sand saves, all that kind of stuff. Because, even the best iron players in the world, you saw Colin Morikawa this week, best iron player in the world, he has off days. He had 2 off days and misses the cut at Sawgrass. Granted, 40-mile-an-hour winds kind of help that too. 3 putts per round, a little bit lower than the average tour event, but not by much. And again, these greens generally are fast, but sometimes they do slow them down, especially if they're accounting for wind that can come up and whatnot. So I don't know if 3 putts are going to be as crucial as, say, they were at the Arnold Palmer. I put a little bit of stock into it at Sawgrass. Turns out that the greens were so soft, I don't think that 5% ended up being correct. But we'll see what the stats say come, hopefully, tomorrow night. We spoke to the average driving distance. It's lower here Guys are trying to hit the fairway and still don't do as much as the average tour event. So, yeah, it's just difficult off the tee. And even though the green and regulation percentage is so much lower, that is a little bit closer in terms of proximity to the average tour event. These greens are slightly under tour average, but not by much. Really, it's only about 100 square feet per green, which is barely anything. So there's a look at Innisbrook from a scorecard and graphical analytical view and whatnot. So let's take a look at the historic conditions here. And right off the bat, you can see scoring relative to par. There are a few average rounds for sure. Quite a few difficult, and what you won't see is easy. This course is never played easy. All difficult and average, and it's about the same number. So I'm definitely going to be looking at some difficult course metrics, like we did with the Honda, or at least we should have done with the Honda. Maybe, hopefully you did. I didn't, and that was a downfall of mine. Was it the Honda or the API? Maybe it was the API. Either way, I know there was a week where I fucked up. So I'm not going to do that, at least on this one. I'm going to put a lot of, or at least some weight into difficult rounds to par. Greens, as we saw in the GCSAA tournament fact sheet, they are Bermuda overseeded with POA, but have always played true to Bermuda. So we're going to be looking at Bermuda putting stats. You see here, hitting fairways. One round it was easy, but a lot of times it is difficult to average. Rough length, average, sometimes short, but generally average. Green speeds, again, they're generally fast. They do slow them down some, especially if they're expecting a little bit of wind, and make them a little bit more receptive as well. And also, too, rain could come into the mix as well. I mean, it is Florida. We saw what happened this week at Sawgrass. It's just Mother Nature's always going to win. Wind is not out of the realm of possibility either. So there's a look at the historic conditions at the Valspar here at the Copperhead course. We look at tournament history, the guys who have played well and not played well here at Innisbrook. Remember, there is no 2020. This is one of the events that was canceled due to the pandemic. So whenever I gather the stats, I only go back to 2017. So I'm only going to be mentioning 4 years. But your top strokes gained total player probably is Paul Casey if you remove Louis. But top strokes gained total player, at least by Fantasy Nationals last 5 years, Louis Oosthuizen. No, I mean, look here, 3 top 10s. The other is a top 20, 4 for 4 and making the cut. Plays this course very well. Paul Casey is second. He's got 2 wins, and then just outside the top 20 last year. Charles Schwartzel, your winner in 2016, 4 for 5. Does have a pretty middling finish and a missed cut, but a win, top 10, and just outside the top 20. Your defending champion is Sam Burns, who is 3 for 3 at this tournament. Very good performance. Bill Hawes is a name to consider. He is at least 4 for 4. Now 2 middling finishes. Let's see, you got Jason Kokrak, who is in my terms, 4 for 4. Again, I don't do 2016. Adam Hadwin won in 2017. Look at the guys that generally play well here. You've got your good putters, Adam Hadwin, Jason Kokrak can get very hot with a putter. Paul Casey is not a good putter, but he has been dialed in with his irons so much at this course. Knows this course that can kind of alleviate some of his putting woes. Louis, just an all-around good player. Sam Burns doesn't get enough credit for how good he can roll it. Bubba, streaky. Abraham Answer, just a solid player. So a lot of your guys that are short game players, your putters, and then Paul Casey, just these solid, pretty all-around guys. Somebody like Daniel Berger as well, who just He's good at everything. Maybe has one or two things that are great or elite. But at the Valspar, you got to think putting. You got to think putting, and you got to think Paul Casey. I mean, 2 wins in his trips here. It's very good. And just because I saw him out of the corner of my eye, Denny McCarthy putting. While he was middling last year, he did have a top 10 in 2019. So putters. Vaughn Taylor, another one. Putters. And then someone with an all-around game, Zach Johnson, short game as well. Let's look at the other end. Guys that, for whatever reason, just have not played this event very well. You've got Richie Wierenski, 0 for 4. Harold Varner III having a very good Players' Championship. He is 2 for 3, but 2 very poor cuts made in the miscut. Patrick Rogers, 1 for 4. Brian Gay, 1 for 4, which is surprising since he's a short game player. Robert Streb, 0 for 3. Martin Laird, 0 for 3. Let's see, Kevin Streelman, 1 for 4. Now, it is a top 20, but 1 for 4 total. Some other names here, Nick Taylor, 2 for 4. Michael Thompson, 0 for 2. Let's see some of the guys who haven't played this. Bez might be good for this course. Short game, putting. Let's see other guys that might be. I mean, McNeely has withdrawn. If Morikawa plays, he could struggle. Not known as the best putter, obviously, although he has been putting very, very well recently. I mean, he gained 7 at the Genesis. At the Century, he was above average, or above the field. CJ Cup, he gained 4. He's been working really hard on the putter, and the results show. He is no longer pray to God he gets field average at putting. He's actually been pretty positive lately. But he still could struggle. I'm pretty confident in that, especially coming off a missed cut this week at the Players. I don't know if this is a course that would suit him very well. Then again, I had Colin Morikawa rated very well, and he didn't play well. So, maybe that I think he's going to suck, he's going to win. It's about what my luck's been lately. But anyway, there is a look at the players that have played this event well and not well in the past. So let's come back to Fantasy National now that we have a few bits of information on the course. The first thing I always do, I'm going to look at Bermuda putting, and I'm going to hesitate on putting fast Bermuda up for now. I do want to kind of take a look at some weather factors tomorrow and whatnot before I really kind of define what speed I think the greens are going to be. More than likely they're going to be fast, but I'm going to take a day or so just to make sure. So your top 10 putters on Bermuda greens, no speeds, no Velcro or fast or anything, just your top performing putters on Velcro greens in the past 6 months. You've got Martin Trainer, Brian Gay, Sung Kang, Denny McCarthy, Adam Long, Brendan Todd, Terrell Hatton, Kevin Kisner, Adam Hadwin, and Tommy Fleetwood. I'm sure some of these numbers will change with the players. Tommy Fleetwood's having a very good Players Championship. Haven't seen much of him, so I don't know if it is iron predicated or short game predicated, but he is having a good Players Championship. Kisner as well. Kisner has been playing well this weekend. Let's see, other guys, notable players here. Alex Noren, always a very good putter. Fitzpatrick, probably one of the more disappointing players, especially for me this week at the Players. I was very high on him. I know a lot of the industry was very high on him, and he just did not play well. So there is a look at your top performers on Bermuda. Let's. I mentioned how we're gonna look at difficult. I do want to look at some long course, even though this doesn't measure to over 7,400. It is a par 71, So these holes do get stretched out quite a bit. In the past 6 months, I don't know if that's going to be long enough here. Let's do the calendar year, but we will filter it to, let's see, custom date range. Let's say April the 1st. Just a spitball. 19 rounds? Sure, that'll do. So your top 10 strokes gained total players on long courses, essentially in the past calendar year, but since April 1st. So 11 months. Charlie Hoffman, Terrell Hatton, Gary Woodland, Xander, Victor Hovland. Remember, Cameron Young has withdrawn, so Tommy Gainey is now 6th. Matt Wallace, Keegan, Joaquin Neiman, Brian Harmon, and Max McGreevy are your top 10. Decent stuff there. Aaron Wise just outside the top 10. Chad Ramey, Schwab, Fitzpatrick. So good stuff there. I'm definitely going to want to check difficult. So your top players on difficult to par. Let's see if there's enough in the past 6 months. 15? Yeah, I don't know about that. Let's do the last 9 months. So what would that be? I guess June. Yeah, let's do, say, the last 9 months. June the 1st. Roughly. It was 15, now it's 22. Okay, yeah, that seems good. So your top 10 performers in rounds difficult to par in the past 9 months. You've got Colin Morikawa, DJ, Louis, Kevin Streelman, Cameron Tringale, Joel Damon, Shane Lowry, Webb Simpson, Mackenzie Hughes, and Xander Schauffele are your top 10. Probably no surprise here, your majors, guys that perform well in big tournaments and such. So a couple other things here before we move a little bit further into it. Anyone that's followed me for any length of time knows that I am just a strokes gained approach player. I much prefer iron play. To me, it's the biggest statistic that lends itself to long-term success. So the top 10 strokes gained approach players in the last 6 months. You got Russell Knox, Mito Pereira, Victor Hovland, Justin Thomas, Sam Burns, Colin Morikawa, Matthew Neesmith, Martin Laird, Luke Donald, and Keegan Bradley. Kind of surprising to see a couple of these names, although we mentioned Russell Knox, how well he had been hitting his irons. I know he made the cut at the Players. I'm not sure where he stands. I think he was having an okay third round the last I saw. Burns obviously tied for the lead or close to it. JT struggling a little bit on his third round, but is right there. Mito missed the cut. Morikawa missed the cut. Laird missed the cut. Luke Donald, I think, missed the cut. So surprising to see a lot of these guys having missed the cut. But again, when you put 40-mile-an-hour winds, you're at the mercy of Mother Nature. I mean, even the best players in the world, they're going to struggle in that. So there is a quick look at, I guess, the overview page or the umbrella stats. Let's come into the leaderboard, and at least for last year, let's figure out some statistics maybe or dig into some of it that might be some areas of focus. We noticed how putting was so important. You can kind of see that here. I mean, Keegan Bradley was only one stroke above the field, and Burgoon was only a half stroke above the field. But all these other, I mean, you got 9 from Burns, 6.5, 4, 9.5, 9. If we just sort on putting, I mean, you can see here how strong this is. You got to come down to Poston, who's middling to clunker, to be fair, and Austin Cook, who missed the cut. But what do you got here? Let's see, 4, 7, 10 of the top 11 were all inside the top 20. then you got a good run of a good finish, a clunker, and then a lot of middlings. So putting very important. Strokes gain approach, again, important, but not so much to the putting. You've got more your top 10s and 20s. You do have a miscut down here. Still solid correlation, just not to the level of putting. We saw that off the tee was the lowest of importance, and it's certainly lower than the other two, but you do have cut makers here, that's for sure. You got to come down to what, maybe 18th to 20th before you miss a cut. Now you do have clunker, and a couple of middlings, but by no means is it not important. There is some correlation there. And then looking at around the green, I would think off the tee was more than around the green, at least last year. So perhaps when we investigate historical years, maybe the around the green will play more important. Let's see. There's a look at the strokes gained. We saw how difficult this course is. So you see here, you've got one player, Brandt Snedeker, outside the top 10. So all your top 10 were positive in birdies and bogeys, so that doesn't tell you a lot. Your first red is in the bogeys, and you have 2 birdies that are negative. So it seems to be fairly evenly distributed there. Although birdies actually might be more important than the bogeys, at least last year, which is odd to say, but we've seen that before, especially at, I believe it was the Farmers, that birdies gained, even on that difficult course, was more important than the bogeys avoided. We can take a look at fairways and greens. I just don't think there's going to be much to it. Obviously, distance does not matter with this being a forced layup type course. You see here greens, not really all that important. Good drives, not really. You still got a bunch of negatives and high negatives. Fairways, not really. So again, I don't see much on this tab that's going to play. I thought sand saves might be something, but you have a lot of red here. Now it's not the highest of reds except for maybe Bubba. So if we sort by sand saves, there's not much here. You got a lot of miscuts and a lot of middling to clunker finishes. So I just don't think there's anything really on this tab. No greens, sand saves, fairways or good drives. Maybe historical years will shine some light on something that might be important, but from last year, no. A couple other things before we move to Excel to finish the show off. We saw that the par 3s were pretty darn important, and we're going to try to figure out if there's a range. At least on the scorecard, 1 fell into this bucket, 3 and 1. So if you look here at the par 3s, you have to come down to Justin Thomas before you get to a negative. So what's this? 16 of the top 17 were positive in par 3s. And then looks like 26 of the 28, top 28, were positive. So pretty good, strong indication there if we sort it. Yeah, pretty strong. Top 20, or actually really the top 15, top 25. Even these two, Howell and Hostler, are middling finishes. A bunch of top 30s, middlings. You do have a clunker from Hickok, Bo Van Pelt, middling. So pretty good correlation here on just the par 3s. Let's see if there's a length that matters. 175 to 200, even though there's only 1 on the scorecard, seems to be decent in correlation. Wyndham Clark was a clunker, but you got a lot of upper to middling finishes. Okay. So now 175 to 200, your two of your top 4 were negative. So, interesting. 200 to 225, there's 3 in this range. Although these numbers are somewhat low, I'm curious to see what the actual top. 3.4 is the top, and you have, 4 missed cuts up near the top. So if anything, it looked like, at least last year, it was 175 to 200. So it'll be interesting to check historical seasons, see if that indeed does play. Par fours, we really saw that it wasn't all that important. I guess we can check the ranges. Most of the par fours, so there was one in this range, I believe 5 and 3. So if we look at 400, 450, yeah, decent. I mean, Grillo missed the cut, but you have a good run of solid to middling finishes. You can see that here. I mean, Troy Merritt. So of your top 20 players, 18 of the 20 were positive in the 400 to 450, and all 20 in the top 20 were positive in strokes gained par 4. So it looks like, I mean, the 350 to 400 doesn't look like it matters at all. 450 to 500, So if anything, it's the 400 to 450 or just flat out strokes gained par 4. But 400 450 looks like it's the most important, and that makes a lot of sense, at least what I'm seeing from the breakdown, where we saw that 5 of the 9 par 4s are of that length. Lastly, let's take a look at par 5s. We saw that is the most important. Kind of like this week at Sawgrass, these are your scoring opportunities. You have to take advantage of it, of them. Strokes gained par 5. Let's see. Top 16? No, 17. So 16 of the top 17, all positive. If there's a range, it might be the 550 to 600, which makes sense because I believe there are 3 in that range as well. Yeah, 3 par 5s, 550 to 600. Looks like it would be this range if there is one that matters the most. Yeah, decent correlation here. Keith Mitchell was a clunker, but your winner was at the top at the 550 to 600. Scheffler, top 30, top 15, top 10, runner-up. Yeah. So if there's a range of par 5s, it's probably going to be this one. Although just flat-out strokes gained par 5 is very important as well. Lastly, let's take a look at some proximities, see if there's a range that might play. We saw, at least from the distribution chart, that 175 to 200 might be the most important range. And from last year, it doesn't look like it's all that terribly important. To be fair, it doesn't look like a lot of these are important. Maybe in between here. Yeah, but you got several miscuts for sure in there. 125 to 150? No, not really. So yeah, not sure if proximity is going to really take any precedent again this week at all. Especially since the majority of the shots come from 175 to 200, and it just doesn't look like there's a lot there. Certainly more than these two. You got your cut makers. Doug Gim missed the cut. Some clunkers here. Yeah, I don't know. Don't see much there in the proximities. I'm going to bring this back to the strokes gained, just in case we want to come back and forth to it. With that said, since we're only looking at 2021, let's take a look at a couple of things here. We saw that proximity wasn't much, fairways and greens wasn't much. Let's take a look at par 3s. We saw that par 3s were pretty darn important. So your top par 3 performers in the past 6 months. You got Patrick Rogers, Jason Kokrak, Martin Laird, Russell Knox, Alex Noren, Brendan Todd, Sam Burns, Denny McCarthy, Luke Donald, and Stefan Jaeger. So those are your top 10 par 3 performers. I can't remember if we saw a link. It was I think it was this one, or maybe it was this one. Now we'll investigate it very heavily in the Data Dive show. But there's a good look at the par 3 performers, and then let's take a look at the par 5s, and then we'll move to Microsoft Excel. So your top par 5 performers in the past 6 months. You got Fitzpatrick, Sam Ryder, Martin Laird. Again, McNeely is withdrawn, so Gary Woodland is number 4. Streb, Justin Thomas, Terrell Hatton, Trey Mullinex, Victor Hovland, and Russell Knox are your top 10. So, decent stuff there. I like it. There's a few names to maybe key in on early if you're going to make some outright wagers, or maybe reserve some teams for your DFS lineups, and some guys to maybe focus on or start playing around some prices and salaries if you find them. With that, let's move over to Microsoft Excel. Give me one moment here and switch the view for you all. So this is the comparison course kind of data sheet that I put together. You'll see here the players when I get that data. Hopefully tomorrow I'll update it, but let's look at the Valspar. We saw that at least graphically it said that the putting was so much more important than it was about even with the approach until you get to the winners, and then around the green was more than the tee. Yeah, it seems about right. This I can see there that's a big outlier for the around the green. So, but then again, that's a big outlier for off the tee. So yeah, probably around the green more than off the tee. It's saying that putting is a lot more important. I'm not seeing it, but then again, if you're up high on the leaderboard, you have to figure that you're going to make a lot of putts anyway, unless your name's Will Zalatoris. Again, with the driving kind of tab or preview, like sand saves, not much there, not really on greens. Good drives. We know distance isn't going to matter because it's a forced layup course. Even fairways is no, so really nothing on that tab. Eagles and birdies and such. Eagles are very sparse on this course, so it's not really going to matter. It's really surprising to see that number so low, but clearly that's a big outlier, so you just throw that out, and I'll just throw it out for you now and see how far that number jumps up. It skyrockets. So definitely not going to be looking at Eagles. These two are pretty darn. I mean, they're almost the same. So we'll have to see when I put together the outlier spreadsheet tomorrow. It looks like this could be an outlier. This could be an outlier, maybe. So maybe birdies is more important. I don't know yet. I'll put that together tomorrow. But these two look fairly the same. Let's take a look at the par threes and the fours, and the fives. We saw that par threes were supposed to be the most important, except for the par fives. But look here, par threes at 35 and pretty darn consistent too, to be fair. And then par fives you see just over here at the far right end of your screen, 40. So actually par threes to me is showing more important than the par fives. Now yes, the par fours are always going to be the most important, but this number is very, very high for par fours. I mean, for example, the Players is a 25, the Corrales 22. This is the highest number I can think of, really. I'm trying to think if there's another course that par fours aren't that big of a deal. I mean, you see all these. So there you go. The Pebble Beach, the par fours are almost not as important. But I mean, Phoenix 20, 22 and a half, 24 at Honda, and then you come to Valspar, it's almost 30. So par fours definitely mitigated in importance. However, look at the importance of the par fours 400, 450. I mean, it's almost the same as just the par four. So definitely going to look at this range of par fours. This range far outweighs either of the other two. So any focus on par fours this week is going to be specifically in that range. You see here, we kind of saw this at least in the 2021 leaderboard. Looks like all the par threes are kind of roughly the same. Some might play more important than other years. The 175 to 200 might be the least important overall. So it looks like it's just going to be strokes gained par three. We'll move over to the par fives. See if you all can see that. Let me move it over for you all. Par fives, 40. You got a 42 and a 44. So this is the range of par fives most prevalent. Sorry as I comically screw up again. This is the range of par fives that are most prevalent. So maybe maybe in here. Par 5s. You can see here none of the proximities really come close at all, really. So there's a look at the comparison course data spreadsheet that I put together. Last thing I want to look at just a little bit is the historical performance here at the Copperhead course. Again, sorted just by average finish. So Victor Hovland only played it once. He did finish third. Paul Casey, the 2 wins in the top 25, I believe. So 3 events. Average finish of 8th. Always played it well. Louis, Abraham Answer, Vaughn Taylor, again, all in the putting. Very, very good in the putting. Sam Burns played it 3 times. He's gained 8.5 in putting. Wow. Jason Kokrak, 4 for 4. Now the putting hasn't been great. The off the tee and approach has been very good. So that's interesting to see, since off the tee seems to be mitigated here. But whatever advantages there are to get off the tee, Jason Kokrak has been getting it historically at this tournament. Can't argue with 4 for 4 there. Scott Stallings, 4 for 4. Average finish at 34th. So let's take a quick look and sort maybe a couple of these things. Let's sort first by putting. All right, so Sam Burns clearly number 1 in historical putting performance. Vaughn Taylor, good putter. Alex Noren, good putter. Pat Perez, Victor was good this year. Denny McCarthy, always a great putter. Matt Kuchar, always a pretty good putter. Brant Snedeker, when he's got the pop putter going. Okay, and then let's do the par 4s, 400 to 450. And we can leave out on that just to leave it just a couple of metrics for you all. So strokes gained par 4, 400 to 450, right here. Victor Hovland, Abraham Answer, very good in his 2 tries here. Vaughn Taylor, so the putting and the length of the par 4s. Kevin Kisner is only 1 for 2, but played the length of the par 4 as well. There's Russell Knox, 3 for 4. Trying to find guys that have at least played this a little bit. Bubba, 2 for 3. Schwartzel, 3 for 4. Neiman, let's see. There's Snedeker. So putting and length of par 4s. Kyle Stanley, 2 for 2. There we go. Here's some performances. Louis, Zach Johnson, Tringali. No, Tringali is 1 for 3. Never mind. So yeah, there's a look at some of the performance there from the par 4s that are most prevalent here at the Valspar. So make sure you tune in tomorrow night for the data dive. Again, hopefully the Players Championship was done first off, and then we have some of the we have the stats for it, so we can really take a look and see maybe if some things were outliers or whatnot. And if you didn't catch the intro, next week is completely filled up. The match play is next week, and that starts on Wednesday. So we are definitely going to be doing the research and the data dive. I'll have to figure out what to do with the DFS Tactics since the tournament starts on Wednesday. But there's also another event, the Corrales Punta Cana. So I'm definitely going to cover that. So we have 4 shows in 3-ish days to do. So I'm going to try to figure out the schedule that I want for that. So make sure you pay attention to social media if I give some updates on the schedule. So thanks for tuning in. In the comments, let me know, how is the Players DFS or outright wagers going? Who are some of the players that you're using? The guys that have been performing for me, I've got Hoagie that's been playing pretty well for me. Let's see. Neiman, I think he hadn't been great in his 3rd round, but Neiman's been up there. Cam Smith, I've got quite a bit who's been playing well. All 3 of those guys are on the same team, so I've been pretty fortunate with that. I've got one team in particular that's got a lot of promise, a lot of potential, but again, anything can happen. So if they come out and shoot 6 overs, I'm going to be not looking too good. So thanks again for tuning in. Let me know in the comments how you're doing. For any of the wagers you still have alive at the Players' Championship, for any of your DFS lineups that are still alive at the Players' Championship, for all of your brackets that you might be starting to fill out. And until I see you tomorrow night for the Data Dive Show, may all your bets be profitable.